Hey everyone, welcome back to the TTA Performance YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about converting my 81 Turbo Trans Am to E85 fuel. So what is E85 fuel? It's ethanol. Ethanol being alcohol-based, kind of like your moonshine in a way. It's usually made out of corn, or fermented corn, I guess, go from there, breaking down the sugars, turning it into alcohol. And the 85 means that it's 85% alcohol and it's mixed with regular pump gasoline. So it's about at the most you're at 85% ethanol and 15% gasoline. Now this varies depending on the gas station and the climate that you live in. So here in Wisconsin, we have, cold weather in the winter, and our ethanol pumps will vary depending on that weather. We'll have a summer blend and a winter blend. And some of the gas stations, the minimum amount of ethanol changes. For instance, we have gas stations here called Quick Trip. That's where some of those gas stations sell E85. The Quick Trip gas station that I went to that was close to my house, it says right on the pump that it could be a maximum of 83% ethanol and a minimum of 51% ethanol. Now, if I go to a mobile station, I've heard that most of the mobile stations that offer E85, the minimum ethanol content in those, even in the winter months, would be 70% alcohol. So I bought a little tester that I can test the amount of alcohol or amount of ethanol in the fuel, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then what we're going to do is pump out all the 93 octane pump gas that's in my car using the fuel injection fuel pump that's in the tank. I'm just going to disconnect the line. I'm going to hot wire the pump, drain the tank, then I'm going to put ethanol in the tank. Then we're going to go into the Holly Sniper software and do some changes to actually be able to use the ethanol, because ethanol does not have as much BTU energy in it as gasoline. So it does require that on average it's usually somewhere around 30% more fuel needs to be burned in order to get the same amount of energy out of it as gasoline. So I'm going to fool the computer. I'm just going to tell it that instead of a 301 cubic inch engine, it's a 390 cubic inch engine, which is about 30% more cubic inch. And then we're just going to let it tune from there and probably make some tweaks and whatever. And we're going to see what happens. So why E85? What are the benefits of E85? E85 being alcohol, ethanol, you have cooling capabilities. So kind of like rubbing alcohol on your skin, it takes the heat out of your skin and it feels cold. Ethanol is kind of doing the same thing. When the ethanol is being sprayed into the engine, it's actually taking the heat out of the air to evaporate it. And it's kind of air conditioning your intake charge. So your temperature, your air intake temperatures are going to go down. Now, when I had 93 octane in the car and I was running just pump gas, I had run water injection to kind of create the same effect. The water injection was misting into the engine or into the throttle body to use the heat to evaporate it and actually air condition the air in a way, remove the heat out of the air. Well, that only gets you so far. Burning or spraying the water alcohol that I was, which was basically washer fluid, which is 70% distilled water and 30% methanol, which is methanol is different than ethanol. They're two different styles of alcohol. It could only go so far. Eventually, its cooling capabilities, you hit a limit. With ethanol, I think it can take it a lot further. That's only one of the benefits of the ethanol. The other benefit is the fact that the octane rating is much higher in ethanol than it is in pump gas. Most ethanol, it ranges depending on that 15% of gasoline that's in it, depending on what the octane rating is of that gasoline that they're mixing it with. Most of the time, ethanol is somewhere around 100 octane. It could potentially be more. Some say it's 105. The point being is it's almost like race gas in a way. Makes it like a cheap race gas, because ethanol is actually cheaper than gasoline. Right now, at the time of shooting this video, it's about $2.95 a gallon, which isn't bad for something that's going to give me intercooling capabilities and give me higher octane. So it's got really good knock suppression. It's going to keep away the detonation a lot easier. Plus the fact that I don't have to run the water injection anymore, because it's automatic. The gasoline's automatically acting as my water injection too. It's cooling the intake charge. So we'll get right into it. We'll start draining the tank on my car, and start converting over to ethanol, and we'll see how it does. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and measure the alcohol content of our E85 that we just got out of the pump. So I have this glass vial. I bought it off of Amazon, and it works pretty easily. We're going to add water up to that line, then we're going to fill it up with E85 to that line, and then we're going to shake the vial. And when we shake the vial, the water and the alcohol are going to separate. And when they separate, you're going to see a line of where the alcohol is versus the water, and the higher up the alcohol line is, the more concentrate the alcohol is. So I'm gonna guess that it's somewhere around 70. Maybe it's higher. Usually for the Midwest here, they'll end up reducing the alcohol content as the colder weather sets in, to make the cars, the flex fuel cars, start easier in the cold winter. So let's see what we picked up today, and how concentrated it is. All right, we added the E85 to it and shook it up, and oh my gosh, it's hard to see, but well, let's just agitate it some more. Let it settle. And you can see the line coming down. Give it a minute here. That is pretty darn close to 85% alcohol. The pump actually said it could vary from 51 to 83. It's starting to maybe come down just below the 85% mark. And it seems like it's pretty much maxed out at that pump right now. So I would say it's probably 83%, like they said. Certain gas stations in the area will go no lower than 70% during the winter. I don't know if I would go back to this gas. Well, I'm not going to drive the car in the winter, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I'd say we're about 83% alcohol, so that'll help for when I try to tune this thing. So it's pretty interesting. All right, let's get to tuning. Okay, so to get into the tune, we're in the Holly Sniper software. I'm going to key on, and then I'm going to link up to the unit. Now the first thing I'm going to do is actually come in here. I'm going to look at the learn table of the current 93 octane tune, and the learn table is not bad. We got a couple high ones down low in here. What I'm going to do is I got to go up here, and I'm going to go offline, and I'm going to transfer learn to base. Yes, smooth it out. Okay, so this current tune that's in here, I'm going to save this as my 93 octane tune. So we're going to say, we'll give it today's date. 12/21, we'll call it 93 tune. I'm going to save that. Alright, so we got our good 93 octane tune. Now I made, actually, so what I'll do is I'll take this tune, we're going to save as, and we're going to call this one the E85 tune. And we're gonna save. So basically right now they're the same. So then I'm gonna come into the EFI setting, and that's all I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna up the cubic inch to 390 cubic inch. That's it. And we're gonna save this. That's a 30% increase in the cubic inch size of the engine. So hopefully it should add 30% to all the fuel tables. So then we're gonna link up, and we're gonna say send that to the ECU. Hit OK, and bring up our gauges, and we're gonna see what happens here. Now what should happen is it should be pretty close. Right now AFRs are kind of rich, very rich. So I'm going to do some tuning here. All right, so we've actually driven the car around and let the Holley Sniper kind of do some self-tuning. It's done some adjustments and some learning. We've transferred that to the base. Kind of got it working out pretty well. Some of the things that I've noticed so far while driving it, intake temps are way down. It's actually really low. I actually modified the thermostat to allow coolant to flow through the plenum all the time to actually get some heat in it, because what I'm noticing is that it's loading up with fuel at idle and it's puddling because that plenum got so cold that condensation was starting to form on it with all the humidity in the air. So I needed a little bit of heat still in there to, evaporate the fuel so I didn't get this rich condition. I did modify the thermostat. I thought it was doing better, but I am noticing that the plenum is still cold. So I think there might be some blockage in the coolant passage somewhere in either the plenum or exiting the plenum. I think it's not being very effective, but that'll be a time, we'll have to look at that later. So right now what we're gonna do, I've been driving it around, it's running really well. We're gonna go to the dyno. So this is my plan to go there. We're going to strap it down and we're gonna leave it with the current street tune that's in it. So right now the tune that's in it, it's basically the 93 octane tune as far as timing and boost, but it's just on E85. So what I want to do is I just want to see, did the E85 make any more horsepower or not? Then the next step is actually I'm gonna lower the boost. I'm gonna run straight off the wastegate. Now the wastegate should be set somewhere around 12 PSI. Basically I'm gonna take out the manual boost controller, I'm gonna run the vacuum hose directly to the wastegate, and we'll get a minimum amount of boost. We're gonna run it at what I think is 12. And then we're going to optimize timing. So we're going to optimize the timing to make the best horsepower at 12 PSI with the E85. We're also going to be watching the intake temps. Right now the intake temps on the street at 14 pounds of boost have gotten no higher than 115 degrees. As I had mentioned in the previous video where we were at the drag strip running mid to high 13s, it said that my temps were at 200 degrees on pump gas with the water injection on. So this is going to be a significant difference with much lower coolant temps, but much lower air temperatures going into the engine. But also we have more octane. This E85 is probably at least 100, maybe a little bit over 100 octane. So I want to see if I can add a little more timing to this deal and see if we can make a little more power. Once that's done, one of the things I'm going to show you here in a second is that I actually hooked up a different style manual boost controller. It's a regulator style, and I have it mounted inside the car. So now I can make boost adjustments inside the car. And then we're just going to play. We're going to start upping the boost. We're going to maximize timing to get the best performance out of it, and we'll see if we can make any more horsepower or not. So let me show you what we did inside the car. So inside the car, you can see here I have the regulator mounted. I had to make a new plate behind here, but what we have here is just a
0 to 30 psi regulator, air regulator, like you'd use on a small air compressor or something like that. And what it's going to allow me to do is, the way I have it hooked up with the vacuum hoses, is that we'll be able to actually pull this knob out and turn it up, and it'll create more boost. There's kind of a whole list of things that you do in order to make this work, but I'm not going to get into it here with all the details and bore you to death with it. Basically, I turn that knob, the boost is going to go up. That's all we really need to know. So let's see what we can do with it. We'll get it over to the dyno, we'll strap it down, and we'll start doing our testing.
So like I had mentioned previously in the video, one of the first things that I did at the dyno, I did do a baseline pull of the 93 octane. I don't want to say it was the tune, it was basically the settings, we'll call it. 14 psi, 24 degrees of timing. The only change being that it was now on ethanol. That first pull did 276 horsepower to the rear wheels, which is a little bit of an improvement, somewhere close to 10 horsepower to the rear wheels, just from the fuel change. And then, like I said, removed the manual boost controller that I had on the vehicle, which is the boost controller that I sell, and ran direct turbo boost pressure to the bottom side of the wastegate to give me the minimum amount of boost, which in this case was 10 psi. So what you're looking at here is the first pull at 10 psi, 24 degrees of timing, and it actually did 239 horsepower, which of course, it's going to be down on power because we're running less boost. So 239, again, 24 degrees of timing. So then the next thing that we did was add timing. So I added 1 degree of timing because I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to, try for 2 right away. So we did 1 degree of timing, and ran it again, still at the 10 pounds of boost, minimum boost, and actually gained. We gained and went up to 249 horsepower. So significant gain just from timing. So we went and tried again for another degree, went to 26 degrees of timing, again 10 psi of boost, but there was no gain. So it's like, okay, it doesn't want any more timing. We're actually going to drop it back down to 25 degrees and just leave it there. I find it kind of interesting because really, well, we'll talk about it more in the final thoughts here towards the end. So then the next thing was, is since the timing just pretty much didn't do anything, it was just, let's start adding more boost. So I started playing with the new manual boost controller, the one that I showed you that's mounted inside the car. This is the air regulator style, and started turning that up. Well, the resolution on that twist knob there's a lot of resolution there. It's not very touchy, so you really got to turn it, almost a whole revolution in order to get a substantial gain in boost pressure. So I was kind of learning that as I was going. So I turned it up. I went back to the 14 psi. Actually, tried to go 1 more pound above that, and went to, I believe it was 15 on this one. It made 284 horsepower, which, wow, okay, that's a significant increase there. Tried to turn the knob some more.
I'm not sure exactly how much boost this next one did. I don't think I really got much more out of it. In fact, that 15 psi, that was probably more like 15 and a half to make 284 horsepower. Then I turned the knob and brought it up to about 16. I don't think I turned the knob far enough. I probably only gave it like a half a turn because I was worried that it was going to get real sensitive. But it didn't. It did put a little more boost into it, and I only gained another 4 horsepower. So it's like, okay, let's try to add a little bit more boost to it. So we started getting a little more aggressive with turning up the knob and turning up the boost. And so that's when the next one came in, and we were pretty close to 17 pounds of boost, and went 295. And that's when it finally hit me. I think we're going to go 300 horse to the rear wheels. So another twist of the knob to add a little more boost. And finally, bingo, we hit 300 horsepower. This was around 17 pounds. It was actually kind of fluttering. It was averaging around 17 pounds. The maximum that it spiked to, and it was very quickly that it was hitting these spikes, was 17.8 pounds, which was almost 18 pounds, but it wasn't very steady. 300 horsepower, 367 foot-pounds of torque. Man, that was unbelievable to me, especially for a stock bottom end, stock cast factory pistons, stock. It still has GM bearings in it and everything. Um, this was quite the shocker to me that it did this. But looking at the data log through the Holly Sniper, that's when I realized that we were maxing out the fuel injectors at this point. They just could not flow anymore. We weren't going lean. I mean, it was barely starting to lean out a little bit, but it wasn't detrimental lean. It was still 11.7, 11.8 on the air fuel ratio, which is probably still okay. I hate to see it go to 12 though. That's just me. And really, the timing was no longer at 25 degrees at this point. I was starting to kind of get scared a little bit. And as I was increasing the boost, I had it set up that the timing was coming down. So close to that 18 pounds of boost, it's only going to put like 20 degrees of timing in it. I think on average, it was somewhere around 21, 22 degrees of timing just to keep it on the safe side. There's probably a few more horsepower there if I were to let the timing go up, if it would take it. I didn't want to chance it. To me, I'd rather have it safe and lose 5 horsepower than try to make some other kind of number on the dyno. Um, so that's where I left it. That's where it's set right now. So some of the takeaways that I was mentioning, um, the timing. So in general, when it comes to tuning any car, really, you have to find where your next limit is, where your next roadblock is. So some cars you might be what you hear you'll hear tuners talk about octane limited, basically stating that if you're running pump gas 93 octane, but you can only put so much timing in it, and before you get into detonation, well then you're octane limited. The engine wants more octane in order to run a higher uh, uh, ignition timing, and you'll make more power that way. Then you'll hear where you're injector limited. Basically, you can no longer flow enough fuel through the injectors that you currently have. You'll see that you're fuel pump limited. Basically, you might have injectors that can flow the horsepower or flow the fuel needed for the horsepower, but your fuel pump can't keep up. So then you're limited on your fuel pump. Um, there's all these different kind of factors, and sometimes you're just you could be boost limited, really, where even the turbo could be too small. You have too small of a turbine housing, and you're starting to reach the limit where the turbo just can't produce any more boost because you can't get the exhaust out of it, or your compressor housing can no longer flow the amount of air required for the horsepower that you're trying to make. There's all these different factors. Again, there's all these limiting factors of you're only as good as your next roadblock, basically, or your next limit. So right now, I'm looking at it as I am injector limited, um, but at the same time, the timing side of things was very interesting to me because it really didn't want any more timing. Um, I could put more timing in it, but it made no more power. So I don't think that I'm octane limited right now because that's all the timing it'll take. Um, but the fuel is helping. The E85 is helping with the additional boost. Could I run 17 pounds of boost on 93 octane? Man, I don't think I could. I never tried it. I wasn't about to try it. I have a feeling that due to the intake temperatures that were happening, I don't think that was going to be possible, but I could be wrong. But I just didn't want to chance it. I figured I wanted to go E85. I wanted the extra octane. I wanted the cooling capabilities also is the big factor. And if I'm going to run that, well, then we'll try to go for the big boost on E85. And in my mind, it paid off. Next step, of course, we got to go to the drag strip. We got to get a quarter mile time. So that's the next part of it. We're gonna take it to the track. We're gonna see what 300 horsepower to the rear wheels does as far as lapse time. And well, I don't know. I'm shooting for something low 13s. There's some speculation that it might go a high 12, but I don't like to be that. I don't want to be thinking that far out there and getting that ambitious and think that it's actually going to do it. But you got to stay tuned for the next video and find out. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.